Addicts 2025, Episode 4, Galaxy of Terror. This week we're going on about Samsung Unpacked 2025. Samsung focusing on AI software enhancements, the S25 Edge, I become a nerdy librarian, we evaluate Gemini, and Ted's thinking about syncing. Hello and welcome to the Tech Addicts podcast. I am your host Gareth, and I am joined this week by Mr. Ted Salmon. How are you, Mr. Ted Salmon?
Surprise, surprise, it's me again. I'm alright, thank you, I suppose, apart from my knee still being knackered, and I've got a heat pad on it now, so fingers crossed, and knees crossed, come to that. Weather report from North Wales today is that it is very windy, but nothing like it was on Friday. I don't know what happened to you in the end in Northern Ireland on Friday, but I imagine much worse than it was here. But you did have the benefit of being inside a house, hopefully. But on Friday, yeah, I gave up in the end and went and stayed at my dad's house for the night and on Thursday night, and it was very, very strong. Nothing like Storm Arwen or anything, but it was still pretty unpleasant. But I imagine, going by what the Met Office said, you were in the eye of the storm.
Well, I live on the east side of Northern Ireland, so it was the west side that got a real hammering, but we still got a bit of a hammering, and it was a scary evening. Well, no, it was a scary morning, actually. Yeah. I was sitting here at my computer, listening to the wind push the roof about quite a bit, wondering if it was going to hold up to it, because I was just watching the news coming in that the highest speeds in the last 10 years were recorded, where some of the wind speeds, I think, where was it? I can't remember. They said a place that was I think it was Galway. They recorded up to 140 miles an hour, which is hurricane force. So I think that side of the island bared the brunt of it quite badly. I was fine here. My house is intact entirely, aside from one thing at the side, which is a wooden arbor that my wife likes very much. It didn't survive it. It got blown over and smashed on the ground. So I'll be trying to fix that at some point in the future. And I've got a plan to fix it, but whether or not I have the skills is anyone's guess right now.
What's an arbor?
An arbor, it's a little like wooden 2-seater seat thing that you sit in the garden.
Oh, right. Okay.
It's got a roof on the top of it. Love seat can be what it was originally called. I think that's what it was sold to us as, but I don't like the term love seat, so it's an arbor.
Not a swinging one?
No. It sits there like a small shed without doors and a seat on it.
Sounds lovely.
But my wife decided she wanted it in the back garden, so moved it into the back garden with a pal because it's really bloody heavy, and we had to take it apart to get it into the back garden. And then she decided she didn't like it in the back garden, so we had to take it apart, take it back out into the front garden. So the structure of it has already been compromised considerably. Yeah. So blowing over in a hurricane, didn't make it last. But there was a lot worse. It was great going out for a drive. I had to take my stepdaughter to work at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and a lot of the roads were impassable. There was tons of trees down and things. It was wild. And there were power lines across the roads and things like that. I was like, woo, it's dead exciting. We haven't had that sort of thing before, so I'm sure there's people in America and things like that who are like, yeah, we live in Tornado Alley and we're used to this, but we're not. We live in Ireland, and the worst we get is a slightly grey sky.
And the school closed.
And all the schools closed, and a large amount of businesses, and even places like Tesco and Sainsbury's all closed as well.
The funny thing was that the odd thing was that I live very close to a train line, as you'll remember from our summer recordings, and the whole of North Wales train lines were stopped on Friday. But me sitting here when I got back here was looking at the train line, and sure enough, there was loads of trains moving around. They were empty trains, I grant you, so they're obviously moving stock around. But it obviously wasn't too windy to be moving train stock around, just too windy to put passengers in them.
Yeah, yeah. How did your mobile home survive it? Did
Yeah,
you
it
come
was
back
all right.
and it was still there?
No, yeah, it was no problem at all. It was a bit of a exactly where I live. It was a bit of a storm in a teacup, really, to be honest. It was very, very windy, but it was not, as I say, it's not like previous bigger storms. And there was no damage at all on the site. And but they had, like, the same as you, really. If you head across to Anglesey and Gwynedd, then they had it much worse across that. It's up that Irish kind of sea channel, isn't it? And that's where I'm a bit further away from that. So, no, I got away with that one, I think.
Yeah. Well, thinking of Scotland as well, it got a hammering too.
Yeah.
But we're getting used to it. I still have a friend who is without power even this morning, and she hasn't had a shower since Friday.
Oh dear.
Friday morning, I think she got one. No, or maybe it was Thursday actually, Thursday evening. But she came round here yesterday morning and had a cup of tea and sat and ate some pastries and things like that and warmed up.
Nice.
And then went back to her frozen old house because it's really, really old. Those kind of old houses that were built out of giant blocks, like old farmhouses that don't have insulation in them. So having a fire going, it just, as soon as you turn the fire off, put the fire out, it just gets cold instantly.
How much
She lives in one of those types of houses.
How much did you charge her for a shower?
Well, I told her she had to bring the coffee beans with her. Well, there you go. So we don't have any real sort of feedback this week, which is, I think, is probably a good thing because it means we're not doing anything wrong. I do like it when people call us out when we're doing something wrong. But I suppose it is worth mentioning that next week we're going to have a bit of a special. We're going to have a bit of a retro special as well. I'm going to take a trip to Seb's Palace to have a look at some of his techie bits and pieces that he plays around with. He's a YouTuber who will hopefully be coming on and giving us a bit of a chin wag about all things retro. But this week we're going ultra modern with a bit of a special in that we're going to be talking all about Samsung and everything that they announced at their Unpacked event on Tuesday?
Wednesday.
Oh, was it Wednesday? Wow. Right, okay. I did watch some of it, and I got really bored. and thought, I'm going to go and watch some cat videos with my son. So I went and watched some cat videos, flicked back on, and they were still blabbering about boring stuff because, it's just another perfect example of how hardware has become dull, and it's all about software that is just a wee bit scary, and I don't think most people will be using the majority of what is being pushed out. Some people, especially in the audience, were very excited about some of the updates. But Ted, give me an example of something that you really felt Samsung have gone the extra mile here and we should be looking forward to in the next 6 months.
Well, I think that the couple of things that were teased were the only interesting things about this. But apart from the two teases, you're quite right. It was all about software and all about the growing partnership in getting in bed with Google. So much so that Samsung Messages now is not going to be pre-installed on the S25 range on release. So they're really ditching their own Samsung Messages and putting Google on by default. Bixby got a slight mention, but it was all about Gemini, really. There was one reference to Bixby for one thing, but it was all about Gemini, and the S25 range are going to have Gemini built in. So they're doing the same deals as as Google did with Motorola. So the newest Motorola devices, and at the I/O event, they were demonstrating with Motorola that the whole Gemini thing is already factory or ROM built in. They're also offering 6 free months of Gemini Advanced to buyers of the S25 devices. Again, focusing very much on what Google are doing and what they're bringing to the table with Pixels, for example. So, Bluetooth pen. Sorry, the S Pen had Bluetooth removed. Which actually I think, for my money, is not a big deal at all, because I do sometimes use my S Pen, but I never ever use it for any of the Bluetooth things like gestures and turning pages and swiping up and down, and Samsung reckon from their research neither does anyone else. The only people that use it are reviewers to review the device, and then that's it. No one ever uses it. Then there's some stuff with Best Face, which is the same as Best Take for Google again. They're just copying the stuff into their camera and into their gallery application. The AI photo search, that for some reason they're focusing on pets, which has not kind of been done before. The Now bar and the Now Brief widget and the lock screen stuff, the copy of what Apple have done initially, and then some other people, very badly done by OnePlus, for example, I was noting yesterday, which is just a rubbish implementation for it. But anyway, the Now bar emulating what Apple have been doing with information flagged up on lock screens, that sort of thing. What else is in terms of software? That's probably about it. So we can go down and drill down into some of the other stuff. The hardware, the small hardware changes, but the two things you're referring to are that one graphic they flashed up on the stage was the tri-fold phone that is allegedly coming, which they're now calling the multi-fold phone. It's not a tri-fold because there's only 2 folds, so they're going to call it a multi-fold. And at the very, very end, they teased very briefly an Edge, the Samsung Galaxy S25 Edge phone, which apparently after the show was over, they put up in a booth and people were able to go and look at it and photograph it and see that it was very, very thin, but they've decided not to call it the Slim, but they're going to call it the Edge. So in terms of software and the 2 announcements, that's it. As I say, there's some other stuff we could talk about in terms of the hardware, if we're excited enough, but I think that's about my takeaway.
Well, yeah, we'll start with the software, and because obviously that was the biggest focus from Samsung here, where they're trying to sell a whole new approach to using your mobile phone, where AI is pretty much embedded in everything, and essentially, it sounds a bit familiar, this, but it's watching the screen. It is watching what you're doing on the screen, and you can interact with the AI and get more information about what's on your screen at the time. So you can hit the AI button, and it'll search for, or it'll interact with, if you're dealing with a photograph, without taking you out of the application. It's kind of just sitting there as an overlay, which is a nice idea, but it's a bit of a scary one. Say, for example, you're dealing with your bank account. That means AI is actually analysing what's on the screen in your bank account, which brings us back to the whole Microsoft conundrum about their screenshotting affair. And I'm worried that this has sort of been glossed over, but I imagine that some of the journalists out there will be querying this, because having some sort of overlay that's focusing on what is on your screen is always a bit scary in reporting back to Samsung. Now, I was reading a couple of comments on Reddit, which is probably a weird thing to do, a bad thing to do, I suppose, in a way, but it actually echoed some of my thoughts here, in that one of the people suggested that, I'm trying to find it here, but it essentially they were suggesting that Samsung are not too interested in hardware that much anymore, a bit like Apple, where they've already established the ecosystem for hardware, and they just get to do unremarkable, well, not unremarkable, but not must-have upgrades, where they as long as they get you into the ecosystem and they've got other ways to monetize, and they're more excited about what AI and the software is going to be able to do to their coffers, more so than having to manufacture new hardware, because it's more expensive to research and develop. There is actually a bit of a glass ceiling whenever it comes to researching and development, because there's not too much more you can do right now, save for some other innovative technology that's going to be put into a bit of phone, a bit of hardware that you'll be able to use. Everything is pretty much there and almost perfected. And each innovation of these phones just makes them better and better and better. And we've been living in a time where we've had the perfect phone. So now it's all about getting the phone to run perfectly, and for those hardware companies to continue to enhance their bank accounts in the same way, without having to have the best-selling phone arriving. And we've got Gemini, and this is one of my big worries about Gemini, in that they're giving you 6 months free. Obviously, at some point in this maybe 24-month contract that you're going to take out to have this, you might just agree to it, and then all of a sudden 6 months into it, you're going to realize that some of the functionality has gone away and you have to pay for it. And then that's gradually going to encroach more and more. I know Samsung have Bixby there, but with all of the AI features coming in, a lot of things can be put in behind paywalls at a later date if Samsung feel that they need to enhance their coffers just that wee bit more. And that's worrying me. We've seen Google take certain functions out of Google Photos and hide them behind a paywall that people were using prior to the paywall being installed. And AI allows for that paywall to be wherever they plan. And with 6 months coming into it, there's going to be a point where a lot of people who have bought this new phone are going to get really hacked off, because some of the features that they really enjoyed using is behind a paywall, and it might not be clear to them that it's going to go, or they might have forgotten about it by the time they get around to that 6 month period. What do you think about that?
Well, firstly, I think that Bixby is going to eventually go away. It's going to take a long time probably, but the signs are there. So, for example, they've now mapped the Gemini trigger physically into the power button, and that's never been done before. The power button has always been Samsung's own, and that's now kind of part shared by Google. The 6 months free months of Gemini Advanced, I do believe, willing to be corrected if someone knows otherwise, but I do believe that you've got to sign up to do that. If you want your 6 free months, you've got to give over your payment details to Google, and you've got to give them your card number, and that if you're not on the board in 6 months' time, they will just start charging you. You can't just get 6 months included and then in 6 months' time Google come along and say, well, would you like to continue? Let's have your card details now. No way. There is that. In terms of the data being processed on device as opposed to in the cloud, that's always going to be questionable, isn't it? And I think you at some point you've got to trust someone to not be skimming information off of your phone screen, and I'm sure that
because they can cache it until such time, or cache it until such time as you're home on Wi-Fi, and then it will report back to Samsung, and they'll just get a big block, or Gemini will get a big block of information from your phone of the stuff you did while you were away.
I'm not convinced that is a real fear, frankly. I think that certainly the financial authority would be I would hope you would hope that they'd be working with, because banking on phones is so hugely almost ubiquitous now that they've got to be protecting people's data in the process. The banking companies have already sidelined the whole two-factor authentication thing in replacing it with their own system and their own security. They step aside from anything built in, so much so that one of the reasons why Android old versions work with banking for so long, because they use their own security and it steps away from whatever Android's doing. I don't know. You can be a conspiracy theorist, and if you read,
I do like it though.
If you read the tech press, I've no doubt at all that you could easily go down the avenue of being fearful of where your data is and who's skimming off what and what they're caching and what they're collecting. And at some point, you've got to trust someone, otherwise you won't be able to use your banking system. And with all the bank branches closing down, what are you going to do for banking? You've got to, at some point, trust technology, haven't you?
Well, you do, yes. But whenever you see things hitting the courts, whenever you see Google being taken to the courts or Apple being taken to the courts over something that they've done, and then being given a fine of, I don't know, $5 million or something like that, which then they appeal, and it takes even longer, and it stays at $5 million. Whereas the information that they've gleaned off you, they've made billions out of, they're quite happy to pay that. And we've seen it time and time again where things have gone wrong, or companies have just decided, screw you. And we are getting to a point where, and we're going to get a tiny bit political, but it'll be one sentence and then we'll move off. The tech oligarchs that are now being brought in to actually run things are going to be a wee bit more exempt from various different laws, because they will be behind the scenes controlling the laws in the Houses of Congress and Commons and Lords and things like that. We've got Keir Starmer standing up and saying AI is going to be the biggest thing in the UK, whether you like it or not. It does everything for us, so let's embrace it. Whereas, the European Union have, I can't remember what it was, but during the week Google just said, nah, forget yous, whenever it comes to something that they've stipulated that Google have to do. And with Trump getting in and all that kind of stuff, and changes to the world, the world's view on technology, we're entering into a very dangerous period where Google can actually turn around to the European Union and go, so that's fine. You can block us or whatever if you don't like what we're doing, and nothing happens. There's no one who can actually take action against the companies if they were to be found to be taking screenshots of your banking screen on Android in the future. Sorry, I got a wee bit conspiracy there.
That was a bloody long sentence.
It was a long sentence. But to go with the pros of Gemini and what we were seeing them doing, there was an awful lot of nice little things, like being able to search through your gallery. And they used an example of a dog where they wanted to see the dog in a red jumper eating cake.
Yeah.
So they were able to search for that, and showed you how AI kind of breaks down that sentence for where you've asked it to search for the jumper and last winter or something, wasn't it? And wearing a blue jumper, eating cake or donuts or something like that. I can't remember what it was. But they did that, and that would be really handy. And it means you can actually find photographs that you think do exist or you haven't seen in a long time and be able to find them, which is something that has plagued us all over the years. Whenever you look through your Google Photos back catalogue and you go, oh yeah, I remember that back in 2013.
Was that photo search inside Google Photos, or was it inside Samsung Gallery app?
I think it was Samsung Gallery app.
Okay.
Because it was Samsung AI that was doing it.
Okay.
But it's tricky, this, in that was one of my main main issues is that Gemini and Samsung have an understanding, and where you have AI interfaces, it's not entirely clear where Samsung ends and Gemini starts built into the interface.
Okay.
So in 6 months' time, if they have signed up for Gemini, they might suddenly notice that a large amount of what they were used to having goes away, and they'll be expected to pay. And signing up for Gemini is not as difficult. Whenever you've got Samsung Wallet or Google Wallet, you probably just hit the button going, yeah, whatever, and then in 6 months' time you're expected to remember, otherwise they try to take it out of you. At Christmas there, Sony sent me an email saying, we weren't able to charge you for PlayStation Plus this year. I was like, oh, right, my card details have expired. And then a minute later I got one saying, payment received, and my Samsung or my Sony PlayStation Plus had been extended for another year. It's like, oh, right, okay. I went and had a look, and they'd gone through every card that I had in my Sony wallet until they got to my son's one, and they charged him for it.
Right.
Which is really crappy. But it's just like,
but presumably,
give us your money.
But presumably, at some point, in small print somewhere in the past, you will have said agree to that. I've absolutely no doubt that you would have done for them to do that.
Yeah, in the small print.
Yeah.
And do you actually read the small print?
Of course not. I take the point.
Yeah. So, Google can do that as well. And like if you have money from your valued opinions or something like that, or a gift card or whatever is applied on your Google account, then you could end up having to pay for or you could end up paying for Gemini month by month before you realize it.
I have noticed,
and then you just get a receipt.
I have noticed recently that firms, I don't know if it's to do with the financial authority or not, but I have noticed in helping my elderly dad with his insurances and all sorts of household stuff, that when you go to take out an insurance, for example, the default position is to not auto renew now. Whereas previously it was always defaulting to auto renew, so you were kind of locked into it unless you actually happened to see that and take the tick out. And I think they are getting a bit better than that on that.
Well, and I remember that was in the news, and there was a Supreme Court ruling or something like that the companies had to turn auto renew off.
Right.
Which is always really curious whenever you didn't turn it back on again, but somehow it got turned back on. And if they're fined, they'll go, fine, that's grand, we'll pay whatever amount it is because we've just made however X amount in profit.
Sure.
Anyway, back to the features.
So the hardware changes. Well, just before we finish the software, you've also got the One UI 7, which we've not mentioned, which is based on Android 15, just in time for Android 16, I might add, because Google are bringing forward Android 16 this year. I've got that already, the beta installed on one of my devices, so I'm keeping track of that. Anyway, One UI 7 does look like it's a big coat of paint, which I think we covered in a previous show, and it looks quite interesting. So the hardware changes are the Snapdragon 8 Elite, which has got the chipset that's got the satellite stuff ready to go, ready built into the actual chip itself, and it's supposed to, the Elite thingy is supposed to handle AI better. As you would expect, I suppose. 12 gigabytes of RAM across the range, which is a reduction for the high-end Ultra model, but the rest of them, it's an increase as a baseline. All of the devices are slightly thinner physically. What else is there? There's the 5,000 milliamp hour battery has apparently got better heat management. They're still stuck on 45 watt and 25 watt charging, so the Ultra's got 45 and the other ones have got 25, which is a bit rubbish given what Motorola.
But is that not an international thing more so, where they're just not it's pointless putting it in there because some countries just can't do it or aren't allowed to do it.
But they can default themselves back. Anyway, the point is that if you buy a Motorola phone or an Oppo phone or a OnePlus phone, you're not restricted wherever you use that. And so I don't buy it. I think that there's still... I don't know why they continue to do this. It can't still be being frightened of the whole... the 7 Edge problem with the... Anyway,
Yeah.
I don't know.
But they're bringing the Edge brand back.
Yeah. There's also 25 watt Qi 2, but it's their own version of Qi 2 without the magnets. So, again, I think we've spoken about that before on the show. 15 watt Qi charging on the non-ultra models. There's a more advanced screen, which is one thing that people are, I think, focusing on a bit, and it's a version of the AMOLED that can take advantage of Samsung's new image engine for better fidelity. I'm sure that you need to be Superman to notice that, but some people are talking about it being better out in the sunlight. So reflectivity, if that's a word, is it is better. Just rattling through the rest of it. Corning Gorilla Glass Armor 2, so hopefully that's better for micro scratches and shattering on the outside. There's a 50 megapixel ultra wide lens on the Ultra, which is apparently new, and it's got better colour correction on it. And lastly, we go back to that's going back to software. The AO Audio Eraser. That's the same as
like this.
Well, it's the same as what Google have done, but they've hijacked it and they're doing it themselves. So it's in their own gallery app, and it lets you mute sounds after the fact. So they demonstrated that, as I'm sure you were about to say, with some chappie sitting by the sea, and they took away the sea sounds. But yeah, carry on.
Yeah. Oh no! I still think as someone who has worked in with audio in the past, that this is phenomenal to be able to just, like in a photograph where you can click a tree and remove the tree with AI. This is one of the big applications that I absolutely adore when it comes to audio, is being able to isolate a particular sound and remove it, not just tone it down, like a roar of an engine. Watching some people on YouTube where they're reviewing a car and they're able to remove the engine sound and then bring it back in as they want to. That's beautiful. That really is just an example of AI done right. That's what we wanted for. That's what I wanted for. Sorry.
It had to come, didn't it? Because the active noise cancellation on headphones is so incredibly amazing that this technology was only going one way, and that's where it's arrived. Anyway, the bottom line verdict, I think, from most commentators are saying that if you've got an S24 or even an S23 or even arguably an S22, you really can save your money here, unless you're really, really tech interested in the new AI stuff. But much of that will filter down to the older models as the weeks and months go forward.
Much of that's one of the things that I went searching for before the show, to see whether or not there was any clarity as to whether or not people who have the S24 or even the likes of the Samsung Galaxy S9 and S10 tablets, if they're going to be able to get, if maybe all of these features when One UI 7 comes, or is it going to be one of those things where you can't have this and this and this? If you want that, you have to upgrade your hardware. And especially when it comes to someone like with the S22, they can promise 7 years of updates, but they haven't said 100% of the updates, and then they'll be able to say, well, it doesn't have this chip and this chip to be able to do that. The processor's not powerful enough to be able to do the AI audio erasing, whereas Mrs. Miggins down the road it is never going to be doing the audio erasing.
In 6 years' time, bugger all the work.
Yeah.
Anyway, what did you find? So what did you find out in your when you looked?
Wasn't able to find if it was confirmed, because I do think it's one of those things where certain features will be very much left for the S25 to ensure that people do move from S24 to S25 who have to have the latest and greatest. And then that S25 Edge, I'm a bit confused as to why it exists. It's another model, you know. Essentially, they did announce 4 phones, which people are saying there are only 3 here, but there's a 4th phone, which is the S25 Edge. It's a very slim design, and it's not called the Slim because that's fat shaming apparently. But the Edge only has 2 cameras on the back of it, which is a bit strange. Now they were only showing off, what are they called? Demonstrators. As opposed to the final finished unit. So things could change between now and then. But there are only 2 camera optics on the back. And I'm wondering, you know, what is this going to actually be? Are we going to have a light S25? Because they have kept the S25 hardware pretty much the same across all 3 models, which is that's a very good thing. I love that. I hate the idea that the smallest S25, the standard, and the S25 Ultra might have different specs, because that makes them a different phone. Essentially, that's a different family. The Ultra has Ultra things to it, but taking out the processor and things like that, changing the processor, does mean that you're actually producing a different line of phones, I would say. But the S25 Edge, I'm wondering if it's because it's coming afterwards, is it going to be just a wee bit of a cut down, cheaper version that can be released in time for Christmas, that you could buy little Billy and little Sally whenever they're heading off to school, or if you're just walking into Carphone Warehouse that doesn't quite exist anymore, at least here, and want a new phone, you can go, that's not terribly expensive, I'll have one of those. I don't need all the big gubbins that are in the S24 range. I'll take that wee S25's Edge, and it can be handed out as a mobile phone for professionals. If you're getting one from your job to use, a bit like I have an iPhone here, I can't remember which one, which is given to me by work, and it's just a cheap one compared to the rest. Like Apple had the name that I can't remember.
SE.
SE, that's the one. I was about to say FE, but yeah, obviously the S25 FE will come later in the year as well. Mm-hmm. So, what did you make of the S25 Edge? Do you have any theories or ramblings?
No, not really, except that it's going to have a smaller battery, and I'm not completely sold on this going thinner thing. The only advantage that I can see with going thinner, which I do experience myself, is when you're using your phone, it seems to balance better. Now that depends on where the weight is, obviously, phone by phone. But I do notice with my own usage that if I'm trying to use my phone one-handed, for example, that somehow the balance just feels better in the hand. I can get away with a bigger screen if it's thinner than if it's not. And it takes me back to the original Moto Z, which was the thinnest phone ever made at that point, and I can remember the same thing with that. It was quite big, well, for the day, but it didn't matter because it was thin and it just kind of sat well. But apart from that, I don't know. I'm not sure if this is just a technical exercise and they're just trying to pull one out of the bag to show people that they're moving, they're trying things out and keeping up with Apple, because Apple allegedly are bringing a slim phone out, or a Edge phone out, or whatever they're calling it. And also coming out of China at the moment, we've got folding phones that are as thin as razor blades, and Samsung are going to want to be testing what they're doing with that going forward for their folding phones, and this could be, one of the stepping stones in order to make all that tech work, or test it out to suckers that are going to give them money for it.
Well, yeah, true. Yeah. It's an interesting idea of what could be coming. I'm interested to see what Apple do with their slim phone as well, and how they market it too. It's nice to see Samsung actually beating them to the announcement, really, I suppose.
Yeah.
But even though it does feel shoehorned in, as in we can drop it if it's not ready.
Yes, yeah, that's right. And as I say, it might never make it to production. They might. This is a prototype, and we're playing with this in order to develop our folding phones. I don't know.
Yeah, true. Well, if anything, whilst it was somewhat underwhelming, it was a bit different, and it wasn't your standard Unpacked. It was less interesting than in years gone by, and gone are the days of looking forward to seeing what the new piece of hardware from Samsung's going to be, and we're having to leave that to smaller, more interesting companies to launch things that are genuinely exciting. This wasn't exciting in the slightest, and that the show, I think they knew how unexciting it was, and they didn't seem to really care too much about jazzing it up, really. Paul Bettany, I don't know if you realised he was the sort of the narration guy, talking over the top, the announcer, I suppose. I don't think he sounded particularly interesting either, although he's an actor who I don't think really does do interesting terribly well. They maybe should have got someone in like Jim Carrey or something like that, have a bit more fun and a bit more zest to it. But it was a humdrum affair that just did the work that it was supposed to do and no more.
Yeah, very dull. But it depends how much you're into AI. If you're having your socks blown off by AI, we're going to be talking about Gemini in a little while. And if you do get your socks blown off by AI and think it's great, that you might think getting in on all this current new tech is worth shelling out for a brand new 1,240. Incidentally, the pricing is the Ultra starts at 1,249 quid. The S25 Plus starts at 999, and the S25 799. And I've just checked with the GSM Arena Tech. Specs, and contrary to what I said earlier, there is a 16 gigabyte of RAM version of the Ultra that's coming along, but you've got to buy the 1 terabyte storage version in order to get that. Otherwise, it's across the board a 12 gigabytes, and they're still making the little one with a 128 version, and some people are kind of poo-pooing that, saying, come on, 256 should be the baseline by now. But yes, pretty uninteresting unless you're really getting your socks blown off with AI.
Well, yes, yeah. And AI is still in its infancy, and I know people can be hard on it, but I am always a skeptic of AI. I see the potential and the benefits, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens as it goes forward in the hands of the big tech companies. So we'll move on to some of our other little bits and pieces that we want to talk about this week, and we'll go into our banter section, where I've got a couple of things that I am quite excited about this week. One is just a wee thing, and the other is returning to something that I've done before, and it's actually monopolised more of my time this week because I've been off work all week, and I've been doing this, and I'm dead excited about it. The first thing I'll mention is obviously, being a Linux user, I play with Linux day and daily, and one of the big pains that I've always experienced was adding things to your startup applications. I know it's fairly easy on Windows, it might be on Mac as well. In Linux, it's always been a wee bit of how is it you do this again? Alright, I have to go to that folder and I have to put a shortcut into this folder. You could do that in Windows too. I'm sure anyone who's done that in Windows knows what I'm talking about. But it's not that easy on Linux, in that it's a different drive structure. And I've spent 35 years with Windows and 2 years with Linux, and it's still hard to just adjust to the new way of thinking. So I grabbed an application that was recommended to me by OMG Ubuntu, the website, which I've placed a link to in the show notes below. And they think that Ignition is a really good application to have a go with this. And I downloaded Ignition and realised it was just such a simple, nice little application that allows you to do something that's a bit tiresome. And I had a wee tinker around with my startup and made it really quite nice. I had to play with it, put this in, took that out. It was so simple to do. It's just lovely, and I thought I'd give them a wee shout out, because if you're a Linux user, Ignition will save you a bit of time if it's compatible with your distro. It's on Flatpak and it's in most of the stores, so check it out, have a play, and make your life a wee bit easier in the world of Linux. Ever heard of it, Ted? Did you give it a go, actually?
I gave it a go, yeah, and I installed it yesterday, and I got it working, and it does what it says on the tin. And yeah, it was fine. It was a nice little solution, isn't it? The only thing I did notice was that I thought it had fallen over and wasn't working, and I thought I put my startup applications in there, and I logged out and logged back in, and nothing happened. And then I was just sitting there thinking, oh well, that was a load of crap, wasn't it? And then about literally 60 seconds or 90 seconds later, they suddenly popped in, and the 3 applications that I put in there came to life. Now, the next time I logged out and logged back in, it worked much more quickly, but I don't know, just that there seemed to be a delay. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't know, but it might be down to the hardware that you're running it on.
Okay, yeah, probably.
Although I've just opened it there and it says could not load some apps.
Rest my case.
Yeah, details. Oh, right, okay, yes, I removed that yesterday, and I've got that to update. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Well, look at you. There you go, you're installing apps on Linux and having a play with them. How do you feel?
It is quite good fun. Just a shout out also to remind people that in 2 weeks' time we should be having a Linux special show with Ian Barton joining us. But yeah, I at the moment I find it fun and refreshing, and it's just nice to do something that's not Windows. I haven't got a problem with Windows particularly, but it's just nice to do something different and refreshing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that obviously I've been spending an awful lot of time with is I'm back to Immich, because I've been using Immich, which is a Google Photo style replacement that is locally hosted, and I've very much enjoyed moving all of my personal photographs over to Immich. But you know, whenever you've got photographs that you don't want to go into your personal library, but you still want to keep them. Like, I have a huge collection of movie posters and stills and all those sorts of things, and I scan bits of movie memorabilia that I have, movie programs or lobby cards and those sorts of things, and I brought those all in, and I keep them on my computer. And I've always been in half a mind, where do I put those? Do I get another gallery application to be able to display those? Do I put them in Immich with my personal photos? And that just, it adds clutter, and you've got albums and things. And it's never occurred to me, never in a million years, just to set up a different account in Immich. And I read someone say that, because someone was saying, I'm using Immich, I'd like to put... I reckon the guy was talking about his porn collection. But I want to put other photographs that are not personal into a gallery manager. And he was saying, should I try Photo Prism and this and that? Which would you recommend to run alongside Immich? Or can I run 2 instances of Immich? And someone just said, set up another account. And I went in and I had a look around. I was like, of course, yes, because I've got my account, I've got my wife's account, I've got my son's account. If I set up another one called Movies, then I've got a Movies account. And I had a look at it going, right, okay, so how do we approach this? How do I have it on my desktop and not have to log out of Immich that I'm already in my Firefox browser, so that I log in to Immich on the Movies side of things. So I have Brave, and I thought, right, okay, well, I'll set Immich up for the movie side on Brave. And now I have Firefox with all my personal photographs, and then Brave with all of my movie stuff. And I'm just having a great time being Mr. Librarian, putting everything in, and Immich is doing its thing on it. So, where you you've got movies, you put them into an album for the movie. The machine learning is recognizing the face, so I can go in and click on Sean Connery and see all of the movies and the pictures that he is in various different movies. And I'm just loving seeing it all coming together. I've never seen it presented like that. I've always had like folders where I've maybe had the Untouchables and then loads of stuff beside it. Admittedly, Immich doesn't do PDFs and it doesn't do Word documents and things like that. So that is something that I haven't been able to import and present. But Immich is allowing me to just put together nice galleries where whenever I go, I'm going to have a look through all my movie stuff from Frantic, the Harrison Ford movie, and go in there, and there you go. There's everything I have. And it's just wonderful. I'm really enjoying using it. And I think it's something that just is so simple. And I've never thought about it before. Have you tried this, or do you do something similar?
No, I don't feel... It feels like yesteryear to me. It feels like what I used to do before Google Photos, and just trusting that if I've got Harrison Ford photos all in my Google Photos, that Google is smart enough for me to just type in a search and it will find them all, and it does. Not for Harrison Ford, I might add, but yeah. So I don't. Again, you see, this goes back to what I was saying about it being refreshing, and it's refreshing some way to say a bit like just going back to DOS. Well, not quite DOS, but you know what I mean. Going back some years where we used to do this. We used to have our own data on our own machine, and we used to. If I want a picture of Harrison Ford now, I just go and search on Google and grab it, and that's it. I use it. I don't feel the need to have it in my own library, but I totally do get the librarian mentality and the data hoarding mentality, and that's old-fashioned, and it does appeal as well.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of stuff that you can't find online anymore. Like I do have images that I can go through Google Images for days if I was to type in Harrison Ford, and I'll never see that lobby card I have. So I've scanned it and I want to keep it. And if anything was to happen to the lobby card, like if my house was to burn down tomorrow, I'm safe in the knowledge that, well, I suppose my Synology would melt, and I haven't currently got all this backed up. So let's not burn down the house tomorrow, but give me a bit of time to back it up to another source as well off-site, and then we can burn my house down, and I'll still have a copy of it. Not that I'm going to burn my house down. But yeah, actually, I'm going to throw in something as well, which really made me. I was talking to a friend the other day about how certain companies make it really difficult for you to do things, and I think kind of it might work with what you're going to be talking to next, and I want to throw it in just right now because I was playing with it. Local Send is something that I've recommended before, and it's a free open source sharing application that allows you to send things to anything else. And if you've got a Linux computer, you can send things to an Android phone, an iPhone, to a Windows computer, or a NVIDIA Shield TV. And I just think it's the best thing ever. I was loading up my Shield with Sega games. I'll be honest with you, I was doing a bit of emulation on my NVIDIA Shield because I was bored one night and I really fancied playing an old Game Gear game that I have, and I went, right, okay, I'm going to go and put an emulator on my NVIDIA Shield, sit in my living room and play it on my big screen TV with the Game Gear game on a 60 or 70 inch TV. That'll be fun. Just play. So I used Local Send and just did it all through that and sent it to the TV. The TV went and grabbed it and put it into that folder there, and I was really happy. It just worked. And I think about the years gone by where when I had Windows, I was having to go and get an FTP client, go and get the FTP address of whatever the Shield or whatever I was using at the time to be able to transfer things and hope that I was on the same network and things like that inside the house. But now with Mesh and with Local Send, it just sends at the fastest ability possible to the device. That's just a wonderful little application that just keeps getting better. I can send things to my wife, dead easy. I sing its praises over and over again. Sorry.
Okay,
Ted,
no problem.
what would you like?
Well, the one thing that just briefly, we should save some of this for our Linux special, really. But I did stumble into this article this week on howtogeek.com, which is a good fun website about syncing files between Linux and Windows. And I was just going to quickly ask you, how does that work then? Do you need, if you're going to sync files between your Linux computer and your Windows computer, at some point you're going to have a shared resource or a cloud-based resource where that's syncing that too, and if both computers are going to get hold of that, you can't attach the same drive to two computers to sync it. So yeah, how does that work?
I'm just trying to work out what way you're coming from, because I'm looking at the article here and I'm seeing number 5 is sync thing, which is something that I use, and it's designed to be used in one particular way, but I use it in a secondary repository kind of way. Sync thing can be set up between, you have one folder on one computer and one folder on another computer. It doesn't matter what platform they're running.
Okay.
It's compatible with both.
Uh-huh.
So if I have Harrison Ford pictures on one computer, and then I send you the details, and you're able to work out how it all works and set it up on your end, then I can share that folder with you, and those two folders, one will exist on my computer, one will exist on your computer,
regardless of who's using what operating system.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
The problem therein is that if I was to turn off my computer, then syncing would not obviously happen. Yeah. And that's where the likes of the cloud come in useful, because it can sync up to the cloud. Well, if I was to turn off my computer, you were to amend a document and then turn off your computer. If I turn off my computer or turn on my computer, I won't see those changes until you turn your computer on.
Okay.
For it to sync across. So it's nice to have something in the middle that will sync at the same time.
Okay, so this sync thing application or software, I could install on my Windows computer, and I can install it on my Linux Mint, and put a folder on both of those, and they will talk to each other and keep each other synced up as long as both computers are turned on. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I took it an extra step where I set up the folder again on my Synology NAS that's always on.
Yeah.
So if I'm on my Chromebook and do something, it will sync up to the NAS.
Sure.
And then if I turn it off and then turn my computer on, it'll sync down from the NAS onto my computer, and it'll stay up to date that way as well, which is good. And I suppose it's bad, because if I delete something, I have to make sure that my Chromebook would be offline.
Yes.
If I wanted to try and salvage that,
yes, that's
because
right.
it'll sync over to the NAS. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's loads of them as well, but I really like sync thing. It's so fast, especially over your local network, and I think that's probably the best way to do it. I don't think I use it outside of the house. It's only inside the house for syncing between all of my devices.
Sure.
Great.
Okay. Thank you.
That'll be the end of that. Anything else, or you use SyncToy, don't you, on Windows?
Yeah, on SyncToy, on Windows I use SyncToy, and you get all sorts of options within the software there, like to echo stuff, and so you can tell it not to delete stuff. So you can add to, you can set it up so that whatever you do to the source on the left hand side, you're not going to, there's no danger of it deleting on the right hand side, whereas what you just described about your setup reflects what Google Drive does. For example, if you download Google Drive onto two computers, you've got to be careful that if you do delete something, it will be gone everywhere, and so you've got to watch out for that. But yeah, if you're on one computer, then SyncToy gives you an option to avoid that.
Yeah. Okie dokie. So we're moving into a wee bit. This is a new well, not a new section, but it's a disturbing headline that I came up with, and I think it's quite appropriate. It's called "Gemini is Bollocks," and I don't know if it captures just how but it comes from the other morning. I sat down. I got a notification on my phone that they had that Gemini was there for me to use, and it was, I think, Thursday or Friday morning after the big Samsung Unpacked. So I sat down with Gemini and I decided to have a wee bit of a conversation with it. And I think the best way to deal with AI is just to say, what can I do with you? And it'll tell you what you can do. And it just said to me, you can design images. Well, my wife does Olio, so I like Olio's a food waste sharing thing, and she likes to put up a new image of someone sharing food with every announcement that she makes that she's sharing some food. So I thought, right, okay, well, I could get Gemini to design a little picture here and now because it says it can design pictures. And I said, how do I design a picture? And it told me what I needed to do. And I went and got a piece of paper and I started jotting down ideas and keywords that I wanted to include in the design of this generated image. And it said, right, okay, you need to do this. You need to tell me to design an image that is of this kind of contemporary or this kind of theme with this, and this. And I was like, right, okay, so I'll put some ideas into this, and there we go. Okay, let's have a go with this. Okay, Gemini. Nothing activated there. That's quite good. Design an image that does this, and this. I'm sorry, I can't design, or I can't generate images. Like, what? Why not? You just told me you could generate images. And it says, unfortunately, that feature is not available to me just yet. But we just had a discussion about how you can do that. But you can't do that. That's really annoying. So I wasted a bunch of time trying to design an image that it can't do. So I'll have to come back to it at a later date and then do it then. I don't understand why it told me to do that. It said it was one of its feature set. Any ideas?
Gemini and all AI, as we said earlier, is in its infancy, and it's starting to evolve, and it's getting some things wrong. It's also being very cagey about some things. Google doesn't want it to get sued left, right, and centre. So, for example, if you ask it to include something in a picture that is including a public figure, for example, it just won't do it. Or if you ask it about bombs or guns or anything that could be in any way contentious, politics and political figures and health matters. If you ask it what is carpal tunnel syndrome or something, it won't. It will give you a brief outline, but at the end of it, it will go through this rigmarole of, I'm not a doctor and you need to see your doctor, and blah, 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 blah. Like it's a disclaimer after everything it's doing. And I think you probably picked on one example of Gemini, however, that is probably not the best example, and I think, and also some of the features, as we said earlier, are only available to people that cough up the $18.99 a month for the Gemini Advanced. Some of those,
but even AI could have made that clear.
It could have done, yeah. You're absolutely right.
And I think it was the second thing that it said it could do.
Some of those tools are now being built into some people's OEM's hardware. For example, Motorola and now Pixel and now Samsung are writing those things into their own routines as well. But again, it's not perfect, and if you try to get it to do something that's outside the scope of their safe zone, it often falls over. I think the thing that I use Gemini mostly for is finding stuff out, not trying to create stupid pictures, but finding stuff out and getting it to summarize things, and sending it a URL of a website and saying, come on, I can't be asked to read all this. Tell me what it's all about. Or the same thing now for a YouTube video. I don't want to watch that stupid video. Here's the URL. Give me a summary. And it does, and it's really good at that. And you can drill down and make it very specific. I want to put a link in the show notes to a video that Shane Craig who we often refer to on PSC, put out yesterday, where he's demonstrating his workflow and how Gemini works really well for just the ways that I described about summarizing and generating content and translating and making all of those kind of word-based stuff, that word-based stuff, work really well. So I'll put that link in the show notes, and you can have a look of it. It's only about 10 minutes long, but it does quite well. And that's exactly what I use it for, and I think it's good at that. And I counter your claim that Gemini is bollocks. I think it's learning and evolving, and the potential is there for it to be very, very good.
Well, I think we could make this into an ongoing discussion, and each week we could see if it can be retitled from Gemini is bollocks to Gemini isn't bollocks, as we discover more and more things that it can do that is actually useful at benefiting mankind.
Okay. Well, we could go down from Gemini is rubbish, Gemini is not too bad, Gemini is getting better, Gemini... gold star for Gemini in about 3 years' time.
Yeah, and that's whenever the Google YouTube algorithm will start recommending this podcast to people on YouTube. Gemini is bollocks is there. It's not going to. But I'll take Shane Craig's explain video and put it into Gemini and say, is this worth watching?
Yeah, you could do that. I think that would be fine.
All right. Well, the bargain basement. We've got a couple of interesting things in here. We'll start with the ASUS ZenScreen, which is a portable 15.6-inch monitor, 1080p, full HD, and it has been reduced in price from £180 down to £94 and 22p. It's currently I think it's actually the number one bestseller in monitors at the moment on Amazon. So there's a link down there if you want to go and grab it. And it is the lowest it's ever been, because it was 95 previously, but now it's 94.22. Wow.
And that is the apex of portable monitors, I think. When I was looking for one a while ago, that was the one that everyone was recommending very highly, but it was expensive. And it's got a built-in battery, which is supposed to last 4 hours. I went with a cheaper one in the end, but it's very dull. It's not very bright at all. But this one, apparently these ASUS ones are much better. So yeah, good shout, good price, really nice.
I think it comes with a little, it's got a smart cover as well.
Yeah, it's a stand. It goes portrait and landscape, and it kind of origami'd the stand, and you can get it. Yeah, it's a nice little unit. It really is. I wish I needed one.
Yeah, me too. You will do one day.
Yeah. Razer Kishi is next. The V2 Pro setup, 46% off. It was 130 quid, although I've never seen it at that price. It's now $69.99, and I've got one of them here that goes with my Razer Edge, another Edge, and it works very nicely. I should use it more.
That's quite cheap as well, $69.99, down from 130. That's good. Good. Next up is a printer, and I know these are quite difficult to recommend to people because you're not so much buying the printer, you're buying the ink. But this is a Brother printer, and it's a mono laser printer, and the cartridges are quite cheap, reputedly. It does 30 pages per minute. It's got an Eco Pro subscription, which for 4 months, and it's got automatic toner delivery. Also, it said that the toner is separated from the non-toner, which is a good thing apparently when it comes to printers. I don't know. I haven't taken a deep dive into printers because I have a life. But it's a good looking little printer, and I quite fancy it, and it's down to £99 from £130 in EDP.
We've got one of these. In fact, we used to have 2 of them, but we've only got one of them now because I didn't need mine any longer. But we've got one at the house, and I can tell you from my purchase history that we bought the Brother's own toner, and it's $31.44 current price. You can buy a compatible one. But we did have a bit of a problem with that for 12 quid. But the laser printer, being mono, is just fine, unless you obviously unless you want to print colour, then you can't. But we didn't need to do that, and it works brilliantly well. And the laser cartridges will last forever. So much better than epoxy inkjet, I have to say.
Yeah, yeah. I think most households should have this, and then save your if you have a colour printer, just don't throw it out. Just hold it for whenever you do need to print a colour document, and this will be a good backup for the boring black and white documents.
Indeed.
The insurance documents.
Right, the TCL 50 Pro Next Paper 5G has been reduced from 279 quid to 215 quid. And I shall put a link to my review, which I conducted there, into the show notes, because I drilled down, I had that phone in, and I got it with a free tablet at the time, you probably remember, but I've not seen it at that lower price before, 215 quid. Obviously you don't get the tablet with it, but it's a cracking phone, really interesting bit of tech. The Next Paper is just lovely to use, so yeah, reduced.
Cheapest it has ever been, 5,010 milliamp hour battery, that's big.
Yeah.
Right. Next up is an expensive one, but boys a dear, I want it. It's the AMD Ryzen 7, the 9800X3D, the finest gaming processor on the market.
Yeah.
And it has been reduced down from 612 pounds to 500 pounds, 499 pounds. Zero, not 99. They don't do 99p's really on Amazon, do they? Yeah, this is the be-all and end-all when it comes to gaming CPUs, and it's under 500 quid now. That's brilliant.
Very nice.
I'd have them tomorrow if I could.
If you could.
But it does mean a new motherboard and RAM and things like that. So it is an expensive purchase if you want to go for a whole upgrade, but some people out there might be able to slot it into their motherboard and get away with it.
Very nice. No bargain basement would be complete without a lovely Bluetooth speaker. And my pick is the JBL Boombox 3, which has been reduced from 500 quid to 360 quid. This is a serious bit of booming kit, which every person that goes down to a local barbecue or beach or sits on a bus can blast everyone away with. It really does look the dog's bollocks. 24 hours. Yeah, wow. 24-hour battery time. Waterproof. It's just a beast. You know, it's up there with those giant Anker ones. But the JBL styling, I think, is really, really nice. You can see how big it is. There's one picture of some guys sitting with it in front of them, and it's just massive. But it's got a handle, and it's supposed to be outdoors and portable.
yeah, and you could take it out down to the beach and blow the socks off, because it comes with 60 days of free Audible.
Oh, right. But you could have some books read to you. Nice.
You can sit on the beach with William Shatner reading his biography.
Yes.
Excellent. Right, okay. The last one here is the Crucial T500 2TB SSD. This is a Gen 4 NVMe M.2 gaming SSD that will go in your PS5. It's got up to 7,400 megabytes per second. Speedy type things, or read speeds. It doesn't say what the write speeds is, but it's probably something comparable. 7,000 megabytes per second, I think. I don't know.
It is, yeah.
It's not, yeah. All right. And it's lovely. It's got a built-in heatsink as well, so you have to take that into account if you're sticking it on your motherboard, but it'll fit inside the PS5 nicely. And it's down from £180 to £116, or £117 really. With 60 days free Audible.
Oh dear. Amazon has started offering me 5 months payments on everything now. It's funny, we say this often, I know, but it goes in cycles, and almost everything they're just offering me 5 months on, whereas about 3 months ago there was nothing at all. Very odd.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that will bring it to an end, and we'll bid you adieu. If you want to get in touch with us, you can by contacting us at there's techaddicts.uk, and you can find us on Twitter at techaddictsuk. You can email us, Gareth at techaddictsuk, or techaddicts.uk. You can find me on Twitter at Gareth Myles, GarethMyles. I have my Mastodon and my Blue Sky. And then there's GarethMyles.com, where there are most links, actually. I don't think I linked to the Mastodon or Blue Sky yet from there, but will do. I'll look into that this week. Ted, where can they find you?
At tedsalmon.com, when I'm not hanging out in MeWe. And all the links to all we do, audio podcasts, and our MeWe groups are all linked over there, tedsalmon.com. I have also got a Mastodon, but I don't often go there. PayPal.me/TedSalmon is where you can head to buy me a coffee if you want to thank me for what I do. Cheers.
All right. Well, we'll be back next week for a little bit of a special with some retro technology being chatted about, 8-bit computers and possibly even some 16-bit computers and 8-bit consoles and possibly some 16-bit consoles. I can't wait. I'm dead excited. Ted, you're excited too, whether you like it or not. Okay?
I'll bring my Nintendo along.
Terrific. All right, well, we'll catch you all then. Take care now.
Bye.